This is Craig and Andrew, two Ranger qualified Army officers with MBAs, here to help you improve your business through leadership.
Each week, we'll deliver easy lessons from the battlefield to the boardroom on how to improve team performance. If you're a leader or want to be, this is the place for you.
Welcome to the cohort.
Disclaimer: the views in this podcast are those of the authors alone and do not represent the views of the Department of Defense or the U.S. Army.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Command Post cohort.
Morning, Craig.
Good
How are
morning.
you today?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm well as well. It's not raining. It's not raining here in Texas today, so that's a good day.
That's good. So today I think we're going to talk about leadership when you first step into that role and what changes when you become a leader. And then we'll go over some mistakes that new leaders make sometimes. And then what are some tips and how do you lead your former peers? Because stepping into that leadership role for the first time, more often than not, you're going to be leading people that you've been working with, may have been some of your best friends that you used to go eat lunch with. And now all of a sudden you're put in this position and you're in charge of them. And what does that look like? And what are some best practices that we can share to hopefully ease that transition?
Yeah, it's about those very few first steps on the leadership journey. Craig and I have been doing this for decades now, as we've discussed before. So we're pretty comfortable in that role. But as somebody who's, yesterday was peer, and then all of a sudden now you're in charge of them.
Yeah.
That can be challenging in many different ways, especially if this is your first role. So there's a lot to get into and kind of a lot to discuss, and some things that'll hopefully kind of help a person in that space through the transition. So hopefully you'll find this beneficial. But Craig, to me, it starts with the decision, right? What changes when you become that leader? Really, yeah, okay. So you might be appointed. So Craig, you're the leader of this shift from now on. Okay, yeah, that change, that is a change. But really, the change to me starts with a decision in your head, right? Okay, I'm the leader now,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, because you've got to make that kind of mental shift. You've got to shift
Mm,
gears from these are just people I work with, these are my friends, these are my team, to where, okay, now I'm responsible. And I agree with this internal mindset that you have to kind of shift um, because it's a different role. And a
yeah,
lot of times what I've seen is, you may be in a manufacturing company, then you've been working, we'll say, a CNC machine, and now all of a sudden you're in charge of three other guys working CNC machines.
mm,
And unfortunately, a lot of times there's not a lot of training. There's not a lot of time spent on developing the new leader. And so you're kind of thrown into the deep end, which usually when, leaders and supervisors have identified somebody and done this, they see the potential there. They're probably already exhibiting leadership type skills.
right.
But even still, no matter how good of a leader you are, it doesn't matter if you're leading three people or 300. If those were your peers previously, I think it adds a layer of complexity because you have those historical relationships there. And when we think back to like expectations and standards, I think that's where if we don't take action, we can have some blurred lines and we can cause issues down the road because now it's not, we talked about when we were at Auburn and we worked with our peers really well, and we felt a responsibility to each other to maintain those high standards.
Yeah,
But then when you are placed in a leadership position above your peers, it's not just you're responsible to them for your behavior, you're responsible for them. And
yes,
how do you make sure that you are setting those conditions and taking care of them? Because now it's on you to make sure that they're all taken care of.
yeah. To me, there's a very clear line where you're appointed a leader. and you have to make that decision. You have to make that switch. Okay, you may not have any training, like you said. You may not even be able to spell leader, right? Like probably I did when I went to Auburn. But so yeah, it begins with that, and then you move into things like, okay, yeah, you go from, like you said, right, being responsible for them. You go to being responsible for them. And what does that really mean? All of a sudden now you're in charge and you're not side by side. That is a very distinct mental shift. Now you're responsible for them.
Yeah, and I think that even there's you can look at it. There's kind of pros and cons of having that history with them. You may be like, well, you say that building trust is important, and we already trusted each other as peers and equals.
Yeah.
That doesn't necessarily mean when you step up into that role that they're going to trust you as a leader the same way they trusted you as a team member.
Yeah.
Because again, those are two
Yeah.
different positions. And so it helps. It definitely will expedite things because you have probably, that track record, so to speak. But you can't just assume that, well, they all know who I am, so they're going to automatically trust me in this role. It's like, no, you've got to be very deliberate in what you do.
Yeah.
And you have to demonstrate very early on that you're not there for self-serving purposes, that you're there to take care of that team and do what's in the best interest of the organization.
Yeah. So, it's like a bank account, right? Every little action you take that supports the team, every little interaction, every objective you meet, it puts little money in your leadership bank account. Because then sometimes there's going to be times when you have to draw some cash out of that account to cover, not actual cash, right? But
Yeah.
theoretically, to cover overtime they have to do, or when they have to
Mhm.
work on the weekends or something like that, right? But what I just thought of, Craig, was to get to those 2 points, like you shift to being responsible for, and like standards and kind of presence, right? So if all of a sudden you are now responsible for them, right? Whereas yesterday you were not. Yesterday you knew that Craig doesn't usually can't work on Thursdays, or has to start his shift an hour later on Thursdays because he has to drop off his kid or whatever.
Mhm.
Okay, well now you're the leader, uh, and you have to plan out the schedule. Well, you knew that yesterday that Craig on Thursdays has to come in an hour after, has to start his shift an hour afterwards. So you can accomplish kind of those 2 things in one, right? You can plan out the shift because now you're responsible for it, right? This week's
Mhm.
shift, here's who's working when. And so you can take that shift and say, "Oh, well, now I know Craig has come
Mhm.
in, start his shift an hour later on Thursday, so I can play that. And I can plan somebody else around that maybe doesn't mind working early, an hour
Yeah.
early on Thursday to help cover it, right? So they get off early." And so now you can plan that out because you already know that,
Yeah.
right? And that's a very easy win to put a little money in your account. And you can go to
Mhm.
Craig and you say, "Hey, Craig, I was writing the shift schedule out, and I know you got your Thursday thing. Uh, Andrew's going to cover an hour earlier, so you can come in an hour later. So that'll work." So that accomplishes several things, kind of right there. Just a simple thing like that, right? And it's not any new information, right? That you all of a sudden you were given as a leader. No, you already knew that yesterday because you were their peer. But you've now demonstrated that you listen to them, you know them, a little bit of trust there, and you can build it that way. And you're showing some presence there by doing that and going to them and saying, "Hey, I was thinking about you and your concerns when I wrote out the schedule, and this is how I'm being responsible for you."
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and I think that's a way that you can kind of look at the positive. Well, we both will talk about how difficult it is to lead your peers,
Mm,
but there are some things that you can leverage, and having that historical information when used appropriately can be good. Of like, okay, well,
yeah,
now I know how to maybe manage a schedule. I know what some of the needs and wants of the team are. So that kind of fast tracks you in the trust development as that new leader. But having that presence and and not just physical, but also because like what you just described, you have to be mentally present in that schedule making to
Yeah.
sit there and think through of like, okay, well, these are these are all my resources, these are my constraints. I know these are the preferences. And it may be that, you may have to kind of prioritize and say, okay, what can we achieve this week with this schedule? But having that background information is good. It's just we have to make sure that as leaders, we don't do anything, especially at the beginning, stepping into that role, that can be viewed as like vindictive or retribution for maybe the ones on your team that were not your best friends. That's what sometimes like we have to make sure it doesn't look like favoritism,
Yeah.
that we are applying things equally, but we do have that knowledge, as opposed to if you're a brand new leader and you step into a group you don't know anybody about, and it was kind of just the unwritten rule that Craig comes in an hour late on Thursdays, but nobody told you and you didn't ask, hey, can I see the past few schedules so I can look at them, kind of see what's customary here? Then you may kind of walk into a trap, and then everybody's mad at you and you didn't even know. So there is a, you know there are some good things about it, but it is, I would say, typically, I would consider it more difficult to lead those peers as
Mhm.
opposed to strangers. And also, I think they're going to, just like we talked about Auburn, we kind of looked at each other a little more discerning, judged each other. I'll say it. We judged each other. It was, it was about, hey, we've decided this is the standard. And new leaders are always going to have a little bit of, you know, nerves going into that role. Every time you take a step up, it's normal to be like, okay, I want to perform well. I want to do good. I'm a little anxious. I'm a little nervous about this. And so it puts extra pressure when they know you. And you may have a great reputation at whatever your current position is, and you're trying to protect that. And you know that your friends or your peers are going to be looking at you very closely. So it turns the heat up just a little bit, I think.
Yeah, so that brings up a great point, Craig, which is the standards, right? Because previously as a peer, like you could joke with each other about the standards, right? And
Yeah.
like, and then and maybe help each other kind of get away with them sometimes, or hold each other to them, right? So now, though, you're the leader,
Hmm.
and you have no choice.
Yeah.
You've got to uphold the standard and
Yeah.
enforce it on other people, which can be challenging, right? And it can take a little bit of courage,
Yeah.
right? And it can be annoying to have to pick up trash every time you walk through the parking lot. Oh my god! But I have to because I'm the leader. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, you do.
that's part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that setting those standards early, I mean, if I had to, because, we think of, hey, these are some mistakes people make and these are the ways to do it effectively. But to jump to what is the most effective thing, in my opinion, is having that conversation early
Mhm.
of, hey, these are how the roles have kind of shifted, and say, hey, look, these are the new standards. This is what you can expect of me. This is what I expect of you. All of that stuff will prevent some of those mistakes. And then it's definitely one of what I would consider uh, the effective ways to lead your peers, is having that standards discussion. But it's going to feel weird, and it sounds
Yeah,
counterintuitive,
yeah,
because I think you should do it as early as possible, like inside of the first 30 days, definitely. But, if we could do it the first week, that'd be great. Because it clears up a lot of miscommunication,
yeah,
where people are just confused. And you say, hey, look, I really enjoyed working as a member of this team. Now I'm excited for this opportunity to lead it. And you can really that's like step one in building that trust. You can say, hey, look, I'm going to work with y'all. We're going to be great at this. It may feel like a difficult conversation, but having that thing early on, is going to get you leaps and bounds ahead of just walking in and starting to act as the leader without having those conversations.
Yeah, yeah, I think you're right, man. Kind of reintroducing yourself, right? Because you're filling a new role. You're kind of a new person,
Hmm.
almost. So, and it doesn't have to be, you know, anything overproduced, right? You don't have to have,
Yeah,
27 8x10 colored glossy photographs with circles and arrows in the back of each one.
yeah,
But you said at the beginning of the shift to get everybody together, just 5 10 minutes. Hey, listen, I am now the shift leader. Here's what we're doing this week. Here's what I'm going to try and do today. So thanks. We'll see how it goes.
yeah,
It
yeah.
doesn't have to be a big production. It
No.
can be a kind of an informal thing, right? Because that can be scary too, having it overly produced, right? If you got everybody that has to be in this big auditorium, you're projecting slides and talk about
Hmm.
your leadership philosophy. No, you don't have to do all that. Especially for the first time, no, just reintroduce yourself because again, you kind of are a new person, you're a new role,
Yeah.
um, and that needs to be acknowledged.
Yeah, and so something you mentioned there remind me of something that I would put into that category of common mistakes that people
Mhm.
make stepping into those roles is a lot of times people go to one of two extremes.
Mm, mm.
Overly authoritarian. So like what you described, if you go too heavy into the production and you get everybody in here and you're wearing a suit and tie for the first time and you've got slides and charts and now it's like you're gonna do as I say, not as I do, and you're all of a sudden like, you know, unfriendly to everybody. That's one mistake I've seen. And then the flip side is you have people that are like they just want to be a friend and hang out with everybody.
Yeah,
And they
yeah,
stay and it's like almost they become the slacker of the group. It's like how would you went backwards, you regressed instead of stepping up into leadership. You're now down in like just one of the bros hanging out. And it's like those I feel like a lot of times people go to those two extremes. You either are like, hey, it's okay, guys, I'm in charge now, but we're all cool, and you just want to hang out and be groovy.
yeah,
Or to compensate, somebody goes, oh, well, I'm in charge now. And it's like they have got their iron fist ready and
yeah.
they're ready to just, crack the whip and go to the other extreme. And that's something that I feel like is very problematic because no matter which of those directions you go, you're going to have there's going to be a long road ahead. It's going to be difficult to be successful with either
Yeah.
of those two techniques.
Craig, that spectrum, so to speak, like from too friendly to too authoritarian is probably we could discuss as a separate podcast. But yeah, you're right. On both ends, you're going to come into problems, right? If you're overly friendly, people need leadership, right? Like in an organization, people need to know who's calling the shots, what the standards are, or else it's going to be chaos and lead to frustration. And if
Yeah.
you're the appointed leader, you have to provide that, right? Whether you like it or not, whether you feel comfortable with it or not, you have to kind of grow into that. You don't have to be perfect the first time.
Yeah.
If you go all the way on the other end, right, you're over authoritarian, like you said. Now you're not listening to people. You're demanding things of them that might be not impossible, right? Or making unfair demands. That's going to create frustration too,
Yeah.
and people are going to leave the organization. So you got to be somewhere in the middle, and that is not to say it's a fixed point either.
No, it's
You might
not.
have to slide on that
Yeah,
scale based
absolutely.
off of your resources, the job type, the people you have, the urgency of the situation, different things like that. But yeah, you have to realize there is a scale, and somewhere on that scale you are going to naturally fall, probably, right,
Yeah.
as a leader. So just being aware of that, that's a good step as in your first leadership role, and kind of exploring that.
Yeah, and I think that it's definitely on a scale. I agree with you. And I think that I think back to the example of there's in a scenario you've got three components. You've got the the leader, and the situation.
Mhm.
And the only one of those three that the leader can at will change is themselves, the leader. I can't change this team that I've been given. I can't change the situation we're in, but I can adapt and be agile to this scenario I find myself in. And so when I think about that, I think about that as when you have to be able to adjust on that sliding scale. It may
Yeah.
be that the scenario or the individual even requires a slightly different leadership technique to be able to
Yeah.
motivate and encourage to get them to their highest performance level. But having that recognition, like you said, of being able to recognize, hey, I'm probably going to naturally fall here. And sometimes we fall that we may naturally fall a little outside of an effective location, and
Yeah.
we have to exert some energy ourselves and like, well, I would
Yeah.
rather be more laid back than what I have to be. Like I
Yeah.
can't let
Yeah.
myself, and it's okay. Like we all have some tendencies. It's just we have to recognize them and then make deliberate effort. Just like you said, we've got to have a deliberate kind of mindset shift into
Yeah.
leadership. Sometimes we have to then adjust to that scenario or to those individuals.
Yeah. I agree, man. So that being one of the mistakes, going too hard or too easy that, new leaders can kind of fall into. And I said previously, assuming that leadership role, making that decision to be the leader does take a little bit of courage. It also is going to take courage to have hard conversations with people. And
Yeah.
hopefully that's not day one.
Yeah.
Maybe day 2 or 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, you are the leader. You have been appointed to lead the organization, and at some time you're gonna have a hard conversation with somebody, whether that's, "Hey, I need you to go clean the toilets, Craig."
Yeah.
That's He's gonna say, "No, I don't wanna do that."
Yeah.
"Well, Craig, I'm sorry, but like, it needs doing. You gotta go to it." Or if somebody, has to work on the weekend, right? You have to have that courage. Hopefully that you're able to get in a few reps on the easy side with those hard conversations before having perhaps even need to terminate somebody. Hopefully that's not part of it.
Yeah. It is. I think those hard conversations, it's real easy to avoid them, especially when you think
Mhm.
of, okay, well, these were my peers, and like technically they made me the leader. And if it's in that first 72 hours, it's extremely difficult because you're
Yeah.
thinking like, well, I know they said I'm the leader, but especially like, and we didn't really get into this much, but sometimes that interim tag can even make this more challenging because it's like, well, they
Mhm. Mhm.
is the team really going to even treat me as I if I actually held this position permanently? But in those first few days, and you've got to have that hard conversation with somebody, it's challenging because, you're thinking, well, man, are they going to listen to me? I need to, maybe I want to build up some more trust and more reputation before I have this conversation.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, like you don't get to just kick that down the road. I think back to our conversations on conflict resolution, and we talked about the cow versus the buffalo. When you get bad weather coming in and the cow's trying to avoid it, and it just gets rained on for a long time, as opposed to the buffalo charging into the storm, going through it, moving in the opposite direction, it turns out easier. And
Yeah.
though it seems counterintuitive, taking those hard conversations, and it may not be conflict, it just may be having to tell somebody, hey, we're working overtime,
Yeah.
or hey, I've got to deliver some bad news. We didn't meet our numbers this month, and this next meeting may not be enjoyable to sit through. But
Yeah.
you still have to have those conversations. And the quicker you do that, I think the more effective, and it helps. Again, it goes back to building trust with your team. They know that you're not going to keep them in the dark, no matter how good or bad the news is. It's that good communication of, hey, look, this is the situation, this is what we're doing, and this is the way forward.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think about, we talk about Craig needs to come in an hour late on Thursdays. Right. Okay, so we've planned for that. We've done that an hour later Thursdays, right? It's in the schedule. It's well known. Well, Craig now shows up an hour and a half,
Yeah.
2 weeks in a row now, three
Yep.
weeks in a row now. Okay, well, that's a problem,
Mhm.
right? And that's going to be a hard conversation to have because yesterday or 3 weeks ago, I was just like Craig, right?
Right, yeah.
And now I have to say, hey, man, like what? You're coming in half an hour late, 3 Thursdays in a row now. Like
Mhm.
we made some concessions to you to allow you to do things you need to do, take care of you, take care of us. We mitigate it all, get it all planned, and now you're taking advantage of that, right? Or are you not? Is there something else going on? right? You got to have that hard conversation. That's not going to be easy if you were a peer, week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And then the other side of that too is everyone else is going to know.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
rest of the team is going to know that Craig's coming in an hour and a half later.
Yep.
And they're going to look at you and say, "What are you doing about that?" They're going to watch.
Yeah.
And that's hard to do, right? Like, as a new leader, that can be something that's challenging, scary, even, right out the gate. But you got to do it.
Yeah. And so what that reminds me of is in the Army when at one point I had a basic training company. And in the first like 24 hours in being there, we talked about the Army values.
Mhm.
And, we've talked on here a little bit about the importance of values and culture and values in an organization. And that was also true in the military. And I remember one of my battalion commanders one time asked the group, we had like 250 brand new soldiers in there. And he said, "Do you think these values will ever conflict with each other?" And, uh, you could tell they were a little confused, like, "Well, you said that these are all good values. Why would they conflict with each other?"
How do they conflict?
Yeah. And he went on to explain to him that, you're going to at some point in here become friends on a minimum a working relationship with these other soldiers going through basic training with you. And you're going to feel a sense of loyalty to them. But we have
Yeah.
standards here. And
Yep.
it could be something as simple as, you're not allowed to buy Monster Energy drinks at the shopette on Sundays. Well, if you know that your buddy here has bought one of these, you have a duty to report that to one of the drill sergeants that there is contraband in the base here. But you're also going to feel loyalty to your buddy. And
Yeah.
so now you have two values that inherently are good: duty, loyalty. These are like, positive things in the military. But now you find yourself in the middle going, well, what do I do? And it becomes this dilemma. And in that scenario, it's a little easier because they're not in charge of anybody. But
Right.
you could easily find yourself as a new leader in between your peer, just like you said, of like, okay, now it seems like they're maybe taking advantage of this situation. Maybe there's something else going on. We don't know yet. We got to
Yeah,
ask
exactly.
questions. But we have to have the hard conversation because everybody's looking at us, and it becomes a values issue of, are you just loyal to your friend, or are you upholding the responsibility of that position for the entire organization? Because it's not just about self, it is about the team as a whole.
Yeah. And yeah, if you screw it up, right, that's okay. Like, hopefully it didn't cost the organization lots and lots of money or gets anybody hurt. Like, if you get it wrong the first time, the first few times, it's all right. It's part of the journey, right? You're not going to, just because you all of a sudden you're assigned a leader doesn't mean overnight you're a
Right.
perfect, fantastic leader. It's it takes practice, but hopefully this will help, right? You just got to get out there and try. You
Yeah.
gotta,
And
yeah.
and I think that's one of the reasons we talk about this as a leadership journey, is no matter how long
Mhm.
you do it, there's still going to be some times you make mistakes in retrospect, but man, I could have done that a little better. I could have done that
Yeah.
differently. So don't beat yourself up too bad about it. But that's the reason we like to share these things, and hopefully you get to think through it before it actually takes place. But I think, if I had to say what is the most impactful, or how do we, if you step into that position, what should you do? I would say immediately you've got to communicate, hey, things are different now. You've got
Mhm.
to communicate. And it's like you said, it's kind of like a reintroduction, because you're now not, you're the same person, but you're in a
Yeah.
different role. And so that's different. And you've got to make those standards really clear. And I know this probably already sounds like, well, this is already a hard conversation. And that's true. Depending on your relationship, it really could be a difficult conversation. And because sometimes after there's an internal promotion, there's already some conflict there. There's some disagreement on, well, I thought I should have got the job. You shouldn't have got the job. But it's real important to address all that stuff and say, hey, look, this is different for everybody. This is new for me. This is new for y'all. And you acknowledge that so that you can really set that tone and move into, this is the way forward. But I think it all starts with that conversation at the
Mm.
beginning, like I said, as soon as possible. And it goes back to the standards in communication that we've talked about repeatedly on here of how important that is with your team.
I think this has been a good conversation, Craig. I think it'll help some people out. It's because you got to take a first step somewhere, and it can be hard to do. So
Yeah.
hopefully this helps.
Yeah. And if y'all have any questions or would like us to cover any specific topics, always feel free to reach out to us on our website, commandpostcohort.com, or on social media and shoot us a line. And we will see you next episode.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a good one.
As always, take these lessons, use them, and spread them. Everyone is welcome in the cohort.
Be sure to like, follow, and subscribe for more, and drop us a line at commandpostcohort.com to request a specific topic.
We'll see you next time on the cohort.